I saw the motion in front moved by me. Is there any way you can take off my name there? I made a mistake there.
Just hold on. Here, okay. All right, we're back from a brief recess. I'm sorry about the delay. Councillor Tree, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I think I'm beginning of the meeting when this motion was, before motion was defeated, I did not realize. So I move that main motion here. Is there any way I'm going to revoke my move for this main motion?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Through the chair, a mover can't withdraw his movement of the motion because the motion is in the hands of council. To change the mover would be procedurally not normal. I'll be honest, and I respect where you're coming from, but if I could, and perhaps the benefit of the public, there's nothing that says that moving a motion means you support something. Okay. Moving a motion is saying you putting it on the floor for discussion.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're good. All right. Council have to remind me where we were with this. We are on a first round, I believe, on this. Okay, and is there anybody else then on the, okay, Councillor Shu, go ahead.
I would like, thanks, Chair. I would like to make a comment regarding the transportation situation with this development. So it's located north along Yonge Street, past Major Mackenzie. Now, here's the thing. When people travel south along Yonge Street, they have to go through the section along Yonge Street between Elgin Mills and Major Mackenzie. That's the terrible traffic situation even now. Because there's a bunch of stores and shops, and parking is allowed on the street during non-peak hours. That means there's only one lane going south and north at the daytime, as my knowledge, based on my knowledge. So if there's any high rises to be built around there or even north of the Major Mackenzie, that will make the situation even worse. That's my understanding. Yes, we are always encourage residents to take public transportation. Even if a resident taking public transit to the future subway at the south, it will be going a nightmare passing through there. That's my understanding. So when they start building more high rises up north, it's going to make the traffic situation a total mess. That's why I always keep saying that alongside with any development. The city is better step up and come up with a solid transportation plan to deal with the extra traffic in the area. I think I share the same thoughts because there's a lot of development in my ward as well. So I totally understand what will be going there. And I don't see any plan regarding transportation in this development. So I would like to ask. No, I'm not speaking on one specific development. I'm just speaking any future development when north of the Major Mackenzie along Yonge Street. That will be a nightmare. That's my foresee. And I just say what I believe here, okay? So,
okay,
that's all about,
folks,
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are you done? Okay. All right, anybody else on the motion in front of us then? Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, through the mayor. And I thank the delegates for providing their comments. And there were a number of comments that were made this morning that I think warrant a bit more discussion. And one of the comments had to do with public consultation. And I certainly understand you want meaningful engagement, certainly makes sense. It's something that we certainly didn't have in the last term of council when council actually removed the committee of the whole meeting. So we have that brought back now so that we do have an extra opportunity for public engagement. In addition, we also started putting our message board back into the Liberal newspaper. So these are things that are certainly working towards that. Is it enough? I agree with you. I would like to see more public consultation than what we currently have. So those are things that I'm sure as a council we can continue to work on. But in terms of this application, traffic seems to be a big concern, particularly when we're talking Creekview and Arton. And that's even before you even discuss this building. That seems to be an issue that I think needs to be looked at. And I think that's something you need to start working with your counselor on, regardless of what happens in regards to this building, because what I'm hearing, it really had nothing to do with the building, the problems that you currently have. You do have some concerns about a potential access coming out from where this building would go. And I get that. I've lived it. As a matter of fact, where I am, a building was put up, and that's exactly where they wanted the accesses to go, was into the neighborhood, not on Yonge Street. And this was a building that was built right on Yonge Street. So I understand where you're coming from, although this particular access that we're talking about is only deemed for emergency. So it's quite different. Please do not interrupt me. I did not interrupt any of you. Thank you. There was a question that was brought up by another individual about a York Region transit plan. And I can't speak to that, but I do want to ask staff about those comments that were made, that they seem to give an indication that there shouldn't even be any access going out onto Yonge Street. Can somebody comment to that, please?
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the property has frontage on two streets, Yonge Street and Arton Avenue. The proposal right now is to have a singular permanent access onto Yonge Street. And as Councillor Thompson has pointed out, the access onto Arton Avenue is strictly for emergency purposes and will not be used as a permanent access. So in the absence of having a Yonge Street access, there would be no access otherwise to a property. So the Yonge Street is the only viable access given the dimensions and location of the property.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer. There were other things that were brought up this morning, and people were making reference to comments made by previous council in regards to this particular application. And one thing I do want to mention is that a lot has changed since those comments were made. In particular, the provincial policy statement has been changed and updated, as well as the growth plan and also the regional official plan. All three of those things have changed substantially. And right now, we as a city are going through an official plan update ourselves to try and align with those policies. So to take those comments out of context, I think was completely inappropriate. What I would like to say is that I will be supporting this motion because I feel that we cannot take the risk of what could happen at OLT, which would be a lot worse or potentially be a lot worse than what you're seeing today. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I got Regional Local Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I said that last week and I said it again. I fully comprehend the neighborhood concerns on a number of things that I share some of the concerns that I mentioned last time. But I'm going to first make some comments and ask questions. Councillor Thompson just referred to some of the points made by the delegates. As Mr. Livingstone, I believe the last person said, people in the chamber are angry. I got it, because it's something that's not the same way when you first move in the neighborhood. I got that. I lived in Richmond for 30 years. I've been witnessing humongous changes. Some of them I don't like as well. So, and I think Councillor Thompson's already talking about changing context. However, there's some of the question raised. I just want to be absolutely clear, because the delegates, if I can sum it succinctly, I hope, number one is talking about there's no traffic study. Number two is no, I believe even may not be referring to flood study, but nonetheless referring to about the floodplain and then the buffer change from 10 meter to 0, which I asked that question last time. So just help me through, Mr. Chair, from staff or maybe commissioner. I thought I've seen a number of places in the staff report, specifically on page 14, that have been traffic study, and even later on another addendum, TIB, has been submitted by the applicant and be reviewed by staff. So for the sake of clarity and for everybody's sake, through you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, please, was it any traffic study, impact study being submitted, any addendum, and the criteria on which the staff have reviewed it, and what's the outcome? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner?
To you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm Councillor Chan's conclusions, as identified on page 14 of the staff report, the various professional reports, traffic reports, and addendums were submitted by the applicant in support of the revised application. Internal traffic staff have reviewed the matter and have signed off and have no further issues at this point in time.
Excuse me. Thank you.
So sign off meaning, if I understand it correctly, Commissioner, this is a professional engineer based on their technical expertise that are satisfied with the report findings or results. Is that correct? Just to be absolutely clear for Mr. Chair. What do you mean by sign off?
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, professional transportation staff employed by the city have reviewed the reports and are satisfied.
Okay, so it's a professional engineer sign
Okay,
off.
folks, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know emotions are high. I got it. As I mentioned, that for changes that different from when we first moved in the community, and I just want to make sure that some of the things mentioned, like no traffic study, I think that's the point I'm trying to make. The other thing too is that I do understand about the loss of privacy or shadow. Now, in the report, I believe page 10, I could be wrong, but it's also mentioned a shadow study has been submitted and reviewed by staff. For you, Mr. Chair, could the Commissioner please confirm A, it has been received, and B, that actually is satisfactory in the sense that it would not block causing shadowing for the closest no-rise residential neighborhood.
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, Councillor Chan is correct. On page 10 of the staff report, it does deal with the shadow impacts and wind studies, and they have been signed off by city staff.
Okay, thank you. Now, I share the concern about traffic. Generally speaking, it is actually, you have to be very patient on moving at any street, of course, Yonge Street as well. And so I got it, but I think it's worth mentioning, and I think the Commissioner in answering, I believe Councillor Thompson answered, there will be no infiltration of traffic from this particular project that onto the side of residential street. Correct? Just want to affirmation of that. So no infiltration, because a couple of delegates talk specifically about the emergency access.
Okay, Commissioner, can you
Just
answer
want to
that?
confirm.
Okay, Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as was indicated by transportation staff at the committee meeting, the transportation study, the traffic study, did not deal with potential traffic into the internal community because the sole access was Yonge Street and Arterial Street. So
Okay.
there was no further need to investigate potential background noise, if you will, regarding the traffic impact.
So I only have limited time, so I just want to emphasize that I asked that question last time because I, for one, I'm also concerned about reducing the buffer of 10 meters to 0. But staff, I believe, already said, and the report said that the Toronto Region Conservation Authority that are experts in environmental issue and using the term just being defined, sign off on this. So I'm still not comfortable, but that is what it is. The only thing that I want to say before my time expires first round is that there any possibility that I know once if this is approved, assuming that's the case, any room for negotiating or discussing with the applicant whether in fact on anything else such as the height of foreplay at all, or this is it, through you, Mayor to Commissioner. Any room for even further talking about changes?
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that, as I had indicated earlier, based on the potential for a referral or deferral, that's up to the applicant, and I won't speak on his behalf as to whether or not he's prepared to make further revisions to his plan. His current submission is before you now, and it's up to council to make that decision based on the submission we have in front of us. But if it's certainly the applicant has the right to change things, but.
Thank you. My time expired first round, may come a second round, but just to the local councillor and the community, perhaps there is hope that the community show how angry, how much change they want, and hopefully with the help of the local councillor and with the galvanized, unified voice of opposition, hopefully there might be some opportunity to negotiate or discuss with the applicant. Because we still have to look at down the road site plan approval, construction management plan, things of that nature. So the city does hold some leverage, so to speak. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. My answer was regarding to the traffic study for the Arton and the Creekville as being answered. So I don't have further questions. I just want to mention this thing. Yesterday evening around 6:50 p.m., I was thrown into that spot and to in person to look at how the spot was. And I realized it was in the middle of the plaza. It's a very narrow area. If you're standing in nearby plaza, anywhere along Yonge Street, you can watch how small that space is. If you imagine 25 floors just right in the plaza, all of them are one floor, and this one will be a speck, really sitting in the north of the entire Richmond Hill. We are now seeing a symbol because we do have a lot of high building will be built up in the south side, but in the north side, even 25, maybe from the OLT perspective, maybe it's not high, but look at it, really, if you're sitting on the street, you look at the north side and the south side, that might be the highest point building if we prove if the new building will be built up there. So I'm just telling this my personal feelings because I was really in the spot and look at how small, how narrow that area is. That's my just personal experience. If you have a chance, take a look and drive. If you drive through, take a look at it as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, thank you so much for coming out, and it's been a long day. And I would like to say one more time that you articulate yourself very well. Thank you for all the delegates and whoever came out today since 7:30 or 8. A lot has been mentioned, and I understand your anger. The anger based on, the short notice. I assume one of the anger, based on the short notice. The last time you left off is July 2021 with a 28 stories application. And then complete silence for a year or two. And then 2-3 weeks ago, comes the 25 stories. And I know they caught you all by surprise. And, to be honest with you, council too. This is a very, very short period of time that, that forces us to make a decision. This is really, really tough to swallow. I understand that. And a lots of points have been asked. And, in terms of flooding, in terms of the traffic study, but actually, whether you like it or not, it's been addressed in the report. But one thing I don't see in the report, but with the indulgence, Mr. Mayor, I will through you to staff, from 28 to 25, and we allow 15. So there's 15 to 25. That's a 10 stories increase. You usually have a section 37 that we need some community benefits from them raising the height. So is there any reason that I don't see any section 37 here? Through you, Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, section 37 is no longer applicable law.
So what about the community benefits? I still remember that, we used to negotiate community benefits if they asked for more. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the old regime would have been a section 37 package in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act that has now been replaced by the community benefits program. But it's not the same context. We're looking for community benefits in the context of what the application brings to the city, but it's not.
It's a change. Excuse me. I think you're saying that the section 37 was changed in one of the pieces of legislation that have happened recently. I can't remember which one. I've lost track of the numbers. But section 37 isn't a thing anymore.
But I understand that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe I got it wrong, not section 37, but I'm talking about community benefits. Is there any way that we can negotiate with the applicant with some community benefits?
Mr. Commissioner?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to defer to Manager Di Maria, who has been working closely on the file.
Okay. Manager Di Maria is on her way.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Liu, the CBC contribution bylaw is basically 4% of the value of the land. So they would do a calculation that way. They would do a contribution in that regard. So it's a set amount now. There is no negotiating like we used to do through the Section 37 benefit package. So they will be providing a contribution. It's just already set through the CBC bylaw.
So it's a monetary
contribution. Yes.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, excuse me.
Okay.
Councillor, are you got
no, I'm going to continue. So thank you very much, Mr. Maria. I still think, at least we should try to fight for a little bit more community benefits. If please, it's okay. Because the applicant is not here. I think that's I'm offended by that, to be honest with you. And I think that, for the residents' benefits, we don't want to go to OLT, to be honest with you. A lot have been mentioned about OLT. Oh, by the way, sorry, I'm interrupting myself. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the commissioner or to the city solicitor. help the residents understand. So if it's a non-decision today, the applicant can file an appeal to the OLT anytime tomorrow morning, the earliest. So what if, I understand that part, they understand that part. What if the residents bring us to the OLT? Is there a cost incurred in that? I'm asking staff. So through you, Mr. Mayor, help the residents understand, because, you know, they looks like to me, they're going to roll up their sleeves and then they're going to fight to the end. So they need to understand, you know, the consequence if they bring us to the OLT. They have the right to appeal to the OLT. So what is the position of the city will be?
Sorry, through you, Mr. I'm trying to understand the permutation. So this is assuming council were to support and approve the development application.
Yes.
But then a third party appeals it.
Mhm.
Of course, we all know the proponent of it is the applicant. So the applicant would have to convince the approval authority, which would be the OLT, by marshaling all the evidence that this is good planning to the OLT as it was appealed by the third party. And then the third party would be there as well, trying, I assume, to refute it because they're the appellant. And the city would be there, but in these types of cases, the city wouldn't really marshal any evidence because it would already be by the proponent. Does that make sense? So the cost would be quite low for the city in that permutation that you explained, because it would be the applicant that would be incurring the cost against the appeal of the third party. And it would be the third party that faces any cost consequences if in the event that they're unsuccessful. That makes sense?
Okay, excuse me. I'm not sure how many times we have to ask that. Go ahead, Councillor. Go ahead. Excuse me, Councillor, go ahead.
I'll pause now. I'll wait for the second round. I need some thought about it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I don't think we have any other speakers on the first round. Is that true? Okay. I'd like to make a few comments then on the motion in front of us. I think I've said this when I met with the residents the other day. I mean, this is not the ideal situation that I'm happy about either. I, as the ward councillor at the time, and people have made that clear, I was not thrilled with the 28-story situation at that time. And it was obviously during the pandemic because my hair was quite long in that video. But what I will say is, there has been some changes to the initial plan. They haven't been, monumental. We certainly haven't gotten down to, 10, 15, whatever stories. But I know that staff has worked really hard on a number of different items, and they're all listed in the staff report, including, there's a couple of, I think it's 46 or something like that, units that were taken out. The FSI has gone down to a more reasonable level. The height is still a little high, but there are 2 stories of that height that are now parking, and 1 story of that height that is commercial. Which I think are all positive. I mean, they may or may not be enough to cause a standing ovation, I'm sure, but I think they are. They have acknowledged what they are. They are changes towards making it fit better. Through the further analysis that we've had at that time, as mentioned earlier, the flood issue has been signed off on by the experts at TRCA. There has been a traffic study and an addendum to the traffic study, which has demonstrated that this is, it will work. There's still more work to do, even if this was approved today, because we still have to go through the site plan process, and some of the details can be worked out at that time. I did make some comments, and this was clearly made that, at the time, the 28 stories was a lot. And I stand by what I said, but the problem is that in the interim between that time and now, the legislative framework from the Ontario government has changed substantially. And the reality is that the heights and densities that municipalities like Richmond Hill, for better or for worse, are going to have to be different than they were back in 2020 and 2021 and before that. I've labored with this for sure since the time that this was announced that we were going to be dealing with this at this time. As I said earlier, I did meet with a number of you and we had a conversation. I realized that I wasn't telling you everything that you would like to have heard, but I think I was being very honest with you. And what I would say is we can choose not to approve this. I mean, that is a choice. But the reality is there's a very good possibility that we will end up at the Ontario Land Tribunal. And if we end up at the Ontario Land Tribunal, it is my estimation, it is my estimation that this will end up costing us a lot of money and we probably won't win. And I've seen, and excuse me, with all respect, thank you. That is my educated position. I have certainly looked into this very carefully, very deeply, and I'm not thrilled with being in a position where I'm going to have to be suggesting something that the community clearly doesn't want. But that is my position at this time. I think it would be irresponsible for us to be not approving this today due to the things that I had just mentioned. So that would be my position. That is it, I think, for the first round. And I think, did Regional Local Councillor Chan, did you ask for a second round? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, actually, I'm glad that Councillor New raised that issue about what efforts and expenses may have to go OLT, Ontario Land Tribunal. So the solicitor have provided input. If committee group, which I believe one of the delegates say that we'll fight this at the Ontario Land Tribunal, I got it. Could maybe City Solicitor, can you help through you, Mr. Chair? What sort of a range of expenses have to be engaged with? Because my understanding is that no longer, unlike an appeal, the city is the major party, is that community members or members of public could be there as participant, but not as a party. So, and which is probably no cost to the participant, but as a party, is all the documents you have to comply with the rules and procedures of Ontario Land Tribunal, and also would have to, I think the term witness has mentioned, have to hire or retain professional either planners or lawyers as witness before the tribunal. So through you, Mr. Chair, to the City Solicitor, can you help to give me a range as to what would be the range of ballpark for a party, not a participant at the Ontario Land Tribunal?
Mr. DeMilta?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I've answered that question already with respect to the city, and I would never provide legal advice to a third party as I'm solely counsel to counsel. But it's a very sophisticated question in terms of legal standing in front of the OLT. So any third party that's interested, I highly recommend retaining and instructing a lawyer in terms of that.
Fair enough. I'm not seeking any kind of legal opinion, advice to not a party, not the city. But I was hoping that maybe a range, it could cost you X dollars just to file appeal, which is not a legal advice in this case. But I would encourage, should this motion in front of us be adopted, that party members of the community who really want to go all the way to the Ontario Land Tribunal to challenge, in this case, as I understand the solicitor, is really the applicant, and of course that the city may get involved as a party as well. What would be the ramification in terms of the amount of money and things of that nature, just to help? I think I mentioned early on that maybe make an effort on that. I know it's very difficult, and I acknowledge the anger, and I think that I mentioned early on the first round that I understand the local councillor is certainly very engaging the community, which is good. We all do, and perhaps, as I mentioned, the city does have a little bit of other leverage in terms of site plan, and also talking about other construction management plan. And I specifically mentioned the crane movement, which is to be another thing to be concerned about, that maybe can work, hopefully with the applicant will be listening, witnessing everybody's anger, and is not saying no, but maybe a more workable, either both height or some other amenities. Thank you, Mr. Chair, but I do see that the risk for the city not to take a position today is actually going to cost every one of us as taxpayers a lot of not just money, but aggravation that in a situation most likely we're not going to win because the staff actually recommend approval. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The mayor is right. Is a tough fight at the OLT. It's a huge risk, and there's a huge burden for the city of Richmond Hill to fight at the OLT. So I don't know. You might think that is a fight that worth fighting. 9 of us might have different opinion. Okay, but I kind of like shifting my focus here. So, I want to go back to the community benefits contribution, because at least whether you win or lose at the OLT, I want you have at least you get something back, or something that benefits the community. So the 4% of the community benefits contribution money, where is it going? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, that might be a question for the treasurer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the treasurer.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu. So the 4% is actually collected in monetary value, and it goes into the CBC Reserve Fund. So back in 2022, in the fall of 2022, Council approved the CBC bylaw as well as the CBC strategy, which outlines the list of projects that we will be spending the CBC funding for.
So is there any chance that we allocate the fund particularly to this neighborhood? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Who wants to handle that? We're playing ping pong here, or pickleball maybe. Go ahead.
Through the mayor to the councillor. So I would say it is at the discretion of council. So council did approve the list of projects that are to be funded by the CBC. Should council decide that there's another project that needs to be prioritized, I think that would be a decision of council.
So in what point of time that we can make that decision?
So we, Mayor, I would suspect that, that through the investiture of capital projects, there would be an allocation of funding to support those projects, and that it would be a decision of council through the normal budget process.
So I rely on the local councillor maybe to engage with the residents and see what they actually want to improve in terms of study, in terms of flood mediation, or anything that will help improve if only, I say if this comes true. We never know. So so thank you very much. Hopefully, we can get something out of this, and hopefully the money can allocate to the neighborhood and, help improve the quality of life of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, through you, the mayor. This has been a very difficult decision for everybody. None of us really would like to be faced with the type of decision that we're having to make today. This is, everybody's going to have their own position on it. People have already mentioned, they're saying that, we're supposedly representing the developers and not the residents. But excuse me, please let me finish. In reality here, we are trying to represent the residents here. The comments that the mayor has made is, please do not interrupt.
Folks,
the comments that the mayor made are bang on. What we're faced with through legislation is very difficult to win at OLT. And I'm not a risk taker. I was involved in risk management before I retired. And I'm not about to be a betting man at this point, not with the residents' taxpayers' dollars. So quite frankly, I am representing the residents, but you want me to represent a small few here. I can't do that. I'm representing all of Richmond Hill. Please do not interrupt.
Excuse me.
So again, it's a very tough decision. I do agree with what the mayor has said. The policy plan has changed, the growth plan has changed, regional official plan has changed. These are the things that are all lining up against us. If we were to all of a sudden take that risk that you want us to take against the OLT, and quite stop interrupting. Can we have
Okay,
that person removed,
excuse me.
please?
Can we continue, Mr. Munch? Excuse me, we've already had to recess once. Go ahead, Counselor. Excuse me. Go ahead, Counselor.
Could we just not remove him right now?
No, go ahead, Counselor. Okay. All right, I'm sorry. We're going to have